Tonight at 70, I finally took out the letter I wrote to my mother 40 years ago and never mailed. If these honest words are a comfort to you, subscribe to Faith After 60 so we can keep walking this road together. It lives in the bottom drawer of my nightstand. Folded in thirds, the way you fold a page you mean to send. Only I never sent it. The paper has gone soft at the creases now. Soft the way old cotton goes soft, worn thin from being folded and unfolded and folded again over the years. My hands were trembling a little when I lifted it out this evening. I lit a candle on the windowsill first, just one small flame against the rain on the glass, the way I like it when the cabin gets quiet and dark. And I sat with that letter in my lap, and I did not open it right away, I just held it. Let me tell you how it came to be. I wrote it in my 30s, one long night after a hard phone call. You know the kind. The call that ends with both of you saying nothing, because everything you wanted to say has been sitting unsaid for so many years that neither of you knows where to start. My mother and I had a lot of those silences, a whole life of them, really. She was a proud woman, careful with her love, the way some people are careful with money they are afraid to run out of. She gave it, but slowly, and never quite in the words you were waiting for. And I was a daughter who just wanted to hear one thing from her. I am proud of you. That was all. 4 small words she never quite found. So that night, I found my own words instead. I poured everything onto that page, the anger first, because the anger came easiest. Then, underneath it, the longing. I wrote the apology I knew I owed her, and I wrote about the apology I felt she owed me too, the one I was still waiting on. It all went down onto the paper, everything I had been carrying, in ink that pressed hard enough to bruise the page. When I finished, I did something that felt very brave. I addressed the envelope, her name, her street, her little town. I wrote it all out, and I set it by the door. And then I never sent it. I told myself I would do it better in person, that a letter was a coward's way, and my mother deserved my face, my voice, my hands across the table. I told myself, someday, when the time was right, when things had softened between us, when I was ready, someday. Have you ever told yourself that? Someday? Here is the quiet question I have carried ever since, and maybe you carry one just like it. What happens to the words when the person is gone before you say them? Where do they go? Do they just stay folded in a drawer, waiting for a someday that already slipped past you? Because I was so sure I would have time. I had promised myself I would fix it in person when the time was right, and then one ordinary morning the phone rang. One ordinary morning the phone rang, and everything I had been saving for someday ran out of time. It was early. I remember the light was still gray at the window, a voice on the line, then a hospital, then the long drive there with my hands too tight on the wheel. And after that, a silence, the kind of silence that does not lift. It settled over the house and stayed. In one morning, 40 years of things I meant to say became 40 years of things I never would. She was gone, my mother, and the letter stayed folded in the bottom drawer, soft at the creases, exactly where it had always been. Here is the part that broke my heart over and over again. For months after, I would reach for the phone out of pure habit. I would pick it up to call her the way I had 1,000 times, to tell her some small thing about my day, and then I would remember. My hand would stop halfway. There was no one to call, just the dial tone, and me, standing in the kitchen, remembering all over again. Grief has a strange cruelty like that. It lets you forget for one soft second, so it can take her from you a second time. And then there was the guilt. I have never found a better word for it than this. I carried it like a stone in my coat pocket, a smooth gray stone, heavy, always there. I could go about my day, hang the wash, tend the garden, and still feel the weight of it pulling at my side every time I reached into that pocket for a tissue or my keys, my fingers would find it. The thing I never said, the letter I never sent, the daughter I told myself I should have been. I kept the letter. I could not throw it away. But I could not read it either. For years it sat there, closed, in the dark of that drawer. Some evenings I would open the drawer just to look at it, my own handwriting on the envelope, and I would close the drawer again. It was too much. Reading it felt like opening a wound I had spent decades learning to live around. Where are you on your own road tonight? Is there a name you still whisper when the house goes quiet? A conversation you never got to finish? Tell me in the comments, only if it helps to say it. Sometimes putting it into words is the first small loosening. And if this reflection is meeting you where you are, take a moment and subscribe. I would love for you to stay. Because for the longest time, I believed a quiet lie. I believed that unfinished goodbyes stay broken forever, that some doors close and never open again. I thought regret was simply a debt, one I would go on owing until my own last day, with no way to ever pay it back. Many nights I sat alone in the dim room with that ache, the empty chair across the table, and I thought it was mine to keep, just mine, that no one could reach it, and I could not put it down. Then came an ordinary Tuesday, 3 weeks ago. Rain on the roof, my coffee going cold in the cup. And for the first time in 40 years, I reached for that letter and began to unfold it. The paper was soft at the creases, worn thin where I had folded it 40 years ago. And in the light of that one small candle on the windowsill, I began to read it out loud, every word, slowly, the way you'd read to a child who is finally ready to hear the whole story. I read the anger first, because that came first on the page. The daughter in her 30s who wanted her mother to say one plain thing, that she was proud of me. I read the longing, I read the apology I owed, and the one I felt she owed me. My voice shook. The rain kept up its steady tapping on the roof, and my coffee sat there going cold beside the open page. Across from me was the empty chair. I read to it as if she were sitting there, her hands folded, the careful way she always folded them. And when the letter was done, when there were no more written words left to say, I said the things that were never on that page, the things I could not have written at 30 because I did not know them yet. I told her I forgave her, out loud, into the quiet. I forgave her for the words she never found, for the love she kept so careful and so guarded. Then I told her I was sorry, for the phone calls I let ring out, for the someday I kept promising and never kept. And then something happened that only 70 years could teach me. Sitting there, an old woman, now myself, I finally understood how hard her own life had been. She was raised by people who never once said the word love. She carried burdens she never set down, worries she never spoke. She loved me the only way she knew how, quietly, stubbornly, from behind a wall she didn't know how to climb over. I understand now. I did not understand it at 30. I understand it at 70. The room did not answer me. Of course it didn't. The chair stayed empty. But something in my chest, something I had been holding tight for 40 years, simply let go. There's a psalm that reminds us we are held even in the dark. I had said those words before, many times. The way you say a thing you hope is true. But right there at my little table, with the candle steady and the rain on the glass, I felt it, held, not fixed, not explained, just held. And here is what I carried away from that table. The thing I most want to leave in your hands tonight. Forgiveness can arrive late and still be completely real. My letter never needed a stamp. It never needed her address. It never needed to reach her at all. The words only needed to be spoken and released. That was the peace I made at 70, not by mailing anything, not by reaching anyone, but by finally saying it into the stillness and letting it go. So if there is a name you still whisper, if there is a goodbye that was never finished, hear me gently. You do not have to reach the person to make peace with them. You can speak it into the quiet of your own room tonight and mean it and be free. Light one small candle tonight, say the words, and let the stone slip from your pocket at last. My coat still hangs by the door, but the pocket is empty now. No stone, no weight, just an old woman and a steady flame and a quiet that finally feels like peace. It is never too late.